it's critical we really understand this issue and know the position that perhaps the state government is taking, as well as the attendant implications, like you mentioned earlier, in countries where we have seen these persons allow their citizens, own weapons. How has that solved their security problems? We have rather seen people, shooting sporadically. We've seen numbers of persons being killed and all of that. But with our peculiarities, as he mentioned earlier, is this really the way to go?
Especially when you look at the fact that these countries that we talk about, for example, the United States of America, has state laws where they are responsible for security, they are responsible for a host of other things, as against here in Nigeria, where the bulk of security, for example, is
at the center.
It is at the center, and it is, as at now, it's still an ongoing argument as to the federal government needs to shed some of these powers and allow state governments to have control, more control, because as it is now, the argument on their side is they don't have any form of control over the federal outfits, the federal security outfits, the police, the army, and other related bodies. So that is also one leg of the question or the conversation that the governor of Katsina State is championing, is also reflecting the predicament that governors have when they have to curb insecurity in their respective domains. But then you see more and more states inaugurating or setting up state-run security outfits. But there's so much they can do. They have their limitations. They are limited. We saw how the Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu was having various debates, various arguments with the then Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, on the issue. His case was KITOS. We want more. We want our security outfits, men of the state-run outfits like Amoteco and the like. That's even a regional outfit. We want them, to be sufficiently armed and they aren't. So it also gives you a sense of, the helplessness they have as against, the more kitted marauders that they are being set up against to tackle. So it's actually, from their end, it's actually very unfair, because one is well kitted, they get their arms from illegal and every other route, but then a state-run outfit that has all the backing of the state government is limited and has nothing.
It's ironic that these persons are called chief security officers of the state and still cannot do as much with regards to tackling matters of security in their state because of these limitations, like you rightly pointed out. And the question has come up as regards, okay, is Nigeria ripe for state police? These are the questions. Talking about springing up matters of this matter of trust, not trusting ourselves, how persons might use them as weapons against their opponents, so to speak. But the issue is we need to tackle matters of insecurity as it is. Because from the statement, you could see the level of helplessness being portrayed by the statement coming from from the governor of Katsina State. And recall that he's not even the first person that has mentioned this. Recall that the former governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, had mentioned at some point that, these people who might have to take up arms against these persons that are invading our state and rendering our farmers helpless as it is. Recall the times that they were having a lot of farmer-header clashes at the time, and we still see that Benue State is still not out of the woods with regards to the matter of insecurity. I hope that the government will look closely at this matter of security, devolving powers of security, such that states can, have some level of authority where they can, because they are closest to the people. And if you cannot deploy security to address a matter as quickly as possible, then at the end of the day, how do you, fulfill your constitutional mandate of securing lives and property, where you cannot really wield the powers that you need to fulfill this security, this constitutional mandate that is hanging over your head?
Well, and there are so many issues. The federal government, it remains to be seen how this particular advocacy by the Katsina governor will fly. It came up before, it was suggested before, and it didn't see the light of day. And people are saying it doesn't appear that this will, make any progress, however valid that, one may want to call it, because even here in the studio now, it also, sprung up, a lot of debate as to. And our guest, our analyst, hoping we can get him back to speak some more about it. He has also alluded, even though he didn't build up on that point, the level of suspicion, tribal issues, religious
Which
issues.
still boils down to trust.
It still boils, and even not just trust between regular citizens, but even between government and the people. Because the argument, on the other hand, is, okay, if and when, if we ever get to that point where states get to control the police or have their own police, manpower and all that. If we ever get to that point, how well will the state governors also fight security to the extent that it will not be seen as a weapon against their opponents? So, the trust issue is a major problem, and it has really reached worrying levels right now. The government would also need to do some form of credibility checks, so to speak. That is also part of the issues that people, regular persons on the streets, are also looking at. That
Absolutely.
Government themselves and the government at the state level also needs to show some form of that they mean well, because if we get to that point now, if everybody has to come and defend themselves now, how well will they check security? And we all know the dimensions of insecurity. States have, peculiar concerns, and all that is accusation, counter-accusation after the other. So it's an ongoing argument, and we hope that perhaps this time around we get to that point of, constitutional amendment where federal government sees reason. You said, and it's an apt point, that insecurity is a reality in many parts of the country, and even our guest also alluded to the point that it is increasingly, getting very, very hard for the federal government to tackle all these major problems that erupt at almost the same time. It's still the same police, and they have their predicament, they have their handicaps. It's still the same Nigerian army that also has to curb, these criminalities and all that. But how well do we have, how sufficient is the manpower to address all of these hydra-headed problems?
Absolutely. The sufficiency, the level of, or the number of, manpower is another challenge that we see. But then again, there's also the matter of proliferation of weapons, small arms and light weapons, and that is a challenge that the government is dealing with. Recall, after the matter of the Libya crisis, it is reported that that had been Nigeria is one of the routes where persons traffic weapons, and so we have seen the proliferation of small arms and light weapons across the country. The country tried to mop up some of these weapons at some point, but we are still seeing quite a number across the country. Yes, there's the local manufacturing and all, but they are in the hands of the wrong persons as it is. How do we manage that alongside we now saying, okay, we want to perhaps amend the constitution for persons to now begin to own weapons as it is? How can we manage that? If we say we are going to go in that route, how do we manage it? How do we ensure that we are not arming persons at the end of the day against the state? We are already dealing with a lot on our hands. So if we are looking in that direction, it's now a matter of bringing up all sorts of solutions, because it's more of a desperate situation requiring desperate measures as it is. But like we have pointed out, perhaps the federal government needs to begin to look at amending the constitution to reduce the powers with regards to security such that states can really do something. But how do we check the states will now be the next question. How do we ensure that these people mean well, like you rightly pointed, if they are going to address this, if we give them those powers, they mean well for the people, knowing that we have a trust deficit. How do we build the trust in the process? We see the police is trying to build trust with the people, but how far has that gone? If you're now bringing them to the state, asking the state to, take some level of authority and control, how do we ensure that we bridge that gap between the people and the state, and everyone is on the same page at the end of the day? Let's also understand that Nigeria is the project we're looking at. A majority of persons do not have anywhere else to go. Insecurity is biting hard across the country with the peculiarities of the north, south, and east. And so it's important that we begin to look critically at what solutions we'll be putting forward as it is. But arming people, I don't think is the way to go.